this is hopefully a review, but I'm going to give you an overview of the aspects of the Constitution and how it's supposed to relate to our government. And the first thing that I want to introduce is this idea of federalism. Now, this is very important, so you guys need to pay attention to this, okay? That what federalism is a system where there are two separate levels of government. In this case, we have the central government and we have the state governments. All right, so we have the government that today is in Washington, and then we have a government in California, one in Arizona, one in Pennsylvania, Texas, right? And when we think about this, and the way I've drawn this drawing here, pretty much shows the way that we think about the structure or the relationship between the governments. Because the way we think about it now is that all the main power lies in the central government, and then the states are somehow less than or subject to the federal government. But that's not the way it was thought when the Constitution was originally ratified. When the Constitution was originally ratified, the framers, if they were going to draw arrows at all, they might have drawn the arrows going the other way, saying that since the states created the central government, they could destroy it, okay? Or that they would not have drawn arrows at all, because the two governments have two separate sets of powers, two separate jurisdictions, and the central government has only the powers that are needed to perform actions that the states can't do by themselves. So for example, interstate commerce, defense and war, foreign relations, and taxation, these are things that only the central government can do. One state can't raise taxes in another state. You guys follow what I'm saying? But when we think about this, we have to think about it in terms of the way people at the time identified themselves. And remember, we talked about this, that people at the time identified themselves according to the state or the colony in which they lived. So if you were from Massachusetts, then you were a Massachusetts man, and Massachusetts was your country. If you were from Pennsylvania, then Pennsylvania was your country. And so what we have then is 13 separate individual countries who are in an alliance or under an umbrella of a central government that is empowered to do the things that the states can't do. So the central government is empowered to do the things that the states can't do, and the states then retain all the other powers, everything else. So now how do we know what powers the central government has? Why do we have an executive branch and a legislative branch?
In the Constitution.
In the Constitution, exactly. So the purpose of the Constitution is to specify and limit the powers of the federal government. That was the intent of it, right? So the idea here, I mean, that the central government is supreme because there is a supremacy clause in the Constitution, but the supremacy clause says that the federal government is supreme in the areas where it has jurisdiction, but it doesn't mean it has all power. It's not all powerful. It's supreme in the areas where it has jurisdiction. So it's supreme in matters, defense and war, foreign relations, and those things. But if you're talking about education or building roads or local sales taxes and things like that, central government has no power over those. You guys follow what I'm saying here? All right, and those powers then are defined by the Constitution. There's going to be a real difficulty with that because the Constitution itself isn't specific about those powers, as we'll see here in a few minutes. But the main thing that we want to take away from this is that the United States is a federal republic. Federal meaning that there are two separate levels of government, and that these governments are defined by their separate jurisdictions. Okay, and one of the ways that you can think about it is looking at the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment, as part of the Bill of Rights, says that all of the powers not specifically granted to the central government or the national government in the Constitution are reserved to the states or the people thereof. Okay, you guys are familiar with that, right? Yes. Okay, I hope you are. All right, so that's it. Federalism. This is a new thing. This is not something that countries had done before this. If you look at France or you look at England, they have a central power and then they have provinces, right? But the provinces are all under the central government. But in the United States, it's more like a union of individual countries. I think it's a lot like the I think it was Gordon Wood in the video said that it's a lot like the European Union, right? The European Union, nobody would say that England and France were the same country. They're different countries, but they had all agreed on a central authority until Brexit, until Britain left. But that was something that was defined in the European Constitution that wasn't defined in the American Constitution.